Hi, friends. Welcome to the sixth holy night. We're about halfway through. There are actually 13 holy nights in this system rather than just six, so we're not quite halfway through. And I am continuing to stream for you live from Salida. I got stuck here with a snowstorm and a little bit of illness, and I'm cradled here in the mountains in the valley in Colorado. It's quite a beautiful place to be. So this sixth holy night is what occurs in the sign of Gemini. And sixth holy night is about when Saturn goes retrograde at 8 degrees Pisces. And this is right at the end of spring. It happens on June 17th. And I know most of us don't think of that as being spring, but the summer actually officially begins on June 20th, 21st, 22nd, whenever the summer solstice is. So it's at the very end of spring that Saturn goes retrograde at 8 degrees Pisces. And that degree, the Chandra symbol, the star spark for that degree is a gypsy peasant woman singing a mournful chant. A gypsy peasant woman singing a mournful chant. And I'm going to begin with the transcript from Ellias. So just a little bit of background. My name is DeSutter. I'm a Certified Soul Level Astrologer. And I trained with Mark Borax at the College of Visionaries and Wizards and did a 2.5-year certification program, and then have continued to do advanced studies and teach some classes in the college. And Mark was introduced to this form of astrology by Ellias Lonsdale, who was the progenitor of it. It's called Star Genesis. And what I'm going to be sharing with you tonight is a transcript from Ellias Lonsdale from earlier this month speaking about the 12 Holy Nights. So here we go with Ellias. And I just want to give my gratitude to Ellias and to Mark that we have this system of astrology available to us. And thank you, Ellias, for these transcripts. So he says, bear with me now as we go through this one. We went into Saturn country yesterday, or actually on the third holy night, which is also posted on my page if you want to review and go into that and hear the introduction to Saturn going into Pisces. And that's when the energy of these 12 holy nights started to shift tremendously. It's going to do that again during the next half hour, and please bear with me in it, because unlike what we've talked about so far, now we really have to go into the depths and stay in the depths and not talk about things, but take the journey all the way through. And this is Anne speaking. That's a very Piscean thing. That's a very Saturnian and Piscean thing to say, because what Saturn wants to do is take things and take them all the way through, and Pisces wants to take them all the way through down into the depths. Okay, so this is tough because what happens in this one is it's really dark and heavy, and it's also really redemptive, and we have to take all aspects of it for that to be real and true. What happens? I said to you that Pisces rules sound, and this is a degree of the very greatest intensity of sound. The mournful chant is one of those chants that you hear from Tibetan monks. You hear in every possible kind of celestial music. You hear it in tribal contexts worldwide. The mournful chant is an immense invocation of what we're all up against here in the depths of mortal existence. What this gypsy is singing is that we've always been in the same situation in every era, in every phase of life, and we've never come through it. It's always remained the same. We're always still on the hook, still in the karmic wheel, still learning the same lessons and not learning the same lessons, still caught in the same patterns and unable to wake up through it. This is a very fatalistic degree of the zodiac, a deeply trans-held degree of the zodiac, a degree that has a bite to it and a sting to it and a heavy undertow. It's also one of the most glorious degrees of the zodiac, as we shall see. What happens in this degree is that we face our dweller on the threshold. We come up against our double. We realize the depth of our self-abandonment, and of our self-betrayal and abandonment of others and betrayal of others. We come to grips with our mortality and the ways in which we have gotten so lost here on earth, and we feel the grief and the anguish and the loss and the ruin of it. But because we're a gypsy, because we are a shaman, because we are a monk, because we are a part of a tradition that honors these things and stays close to the earth and doesn't just think about it on alternate Sundays, what happens is the gypsy, her very breath is the mournful chant. She's constantly in the mournful chant. She doesn't ever go out of it. This isn't a marking of a special moment. This is the invocation of the way it's always been, and it always will be, apparently. It's the sense that we don't know how to transmute and overcome what we're up against inside. We have no idea. Our collective wisdom has failed us, and it has faded, and we're here all alone, and nothing adds up, and we've been abandoned by the gods, apparently. And we are being inundated by darkness and evil spirits, and nothing is going the way it's supposed to, the way we were promised it would. And we feel really horrible about it. And we won't shut up about it. We can't shut up about it. We have to let it out. We have to say what it feels like to be earthbound, to be stuck here, to be lost here so thoroughly and so completely. So there will be a lot of angst, a lot of anguish, a lot of regrets and recriminations, a lot of ways that people will be caught in the depth and the dark side of Saturn and Pisces. But yet again, that also means that for any of us who are here for the purpose of turning this world around, this is an optimal time, almost the best time we could ever ask for. Why? Because when the collective soul goes deeper under, there is a, how do I put this? Everybody of spirit who is meant to join forces with us, such as those who have died, can come closer, has a much greater access point when we are going through the depths. When we feel great and everything's just terrific and we're just ongoing, we don't feel any need for spirit, and spirit tends to be sort of out there beyond us. But when we are crawling with pain and anguish, that's when spirit is called all the way in and through. Of all the things that happen with the gypsy singing the mournful chant, it's a degree, it's an influence that's all about calling in the spirits, bringing everybody here with us so that we can recover together. We can restore the covenant together. The theme that I see emerging is that 2023 is the year when we hit bottom so that we can rebound. When we lose everything so that we can find it. Now, I'm going to talk about something I've talked about before, but I haven't talked about it in quite a while, and most of you will not have heard about this at all. A woman that I knew who was born with Saturn in Pisces, she was born a long time ago, 1907 or 1908, whichever of those is the right year. And she was very much a Saturn and Pisces person, very prominent in her chart. And she founded a movement, a healing modality called Wellsprings that still exists. And I'm going to give an aside here. He says later in the transcript, and I took part of that out because there was just a lot that wouldn't apply to what we're doing here, that if you want to look that up online, Wellsprings, it's the one that's it began in California, it's in South Carolina. So just as a reference if you're curious about that. And Elias's wife, his wife at that time, Sarah, was her most ardent student and follower and learned the entire methodology of Wellsprings, and this became the key to her life in so many ways. When I knew her, what does Wellsprings say about the Saturn and Pisces-ness of life? Kay was a person who suffered tremendously throughout her life for a host of reasons, and what she had learned was that the one thing that was so redemptive and so powerful and so healing and so good was that she had suffered too much, and she had learned what to do with that suffering. And she was a very, very independent and ornery person, a very eccentric and wild person. Everything she came up with was always very original and creative. She was an artist in every way. And what she found was that when there is a wave of suffering and it's pulling you under, if you can keep going under with it all the way, not resisting it, not trying to surface, not trying to make things better, not trying to insist that it's all going to work out. If you instead stay in the deep current of what's dragging you all the way under, you will naturally hit bottom and you will rebound. I watched this happen 100 times with my wife and many others, and it happened with me, and it happened in groups, and it happened every time we did these incredible massages to classical music that were involved in all this wellspring work. And when you went to the darkest place, if you surrendered into it, spirit would rebound you, and you would suddenly feel this immense relief and release. You wouldn't be just sort of trapped there, which of course is what the mind fears. You know, you're just going to be stuck here forever. Instead, it was the opposite. If you could let go, it was all about letting go. If you could let go into the carrier wave, taking you all the way under and through, it would take you through and would find that there was a joy and an instantaneous greater spirit connection in you that you could carry into clearing the past and opening the space in ways that were karmically cleansing and spiritually rejuvenative. It was a really strong method that I'm butchering in the way I'm talking about it because I'm trying to describe it too fast, because there's too many things to go into here. It really is something else. So, what we have here is that the way of being in the world, which is demonstrably effective, says to us that the worst things get, that the worse things get, that's when things get much better. Which is in fact what Kay Ortman, the woman that I was just talking about that developed this wellspring work, would always say. It's only when the worst happens that the best can happen. You have to take the worst to find the best. And if that's true, if that could be the way it really is, which it is, that is true, it means that if 2023, especially the middle of 2023, features a collective downsliding even further into the abyss, instead of becoming discouraged and despondent and feeling like, oh God, this is it, we're never going to get out of this one, if you can move with the energy frequency of it and treat it as a transmutational material that has to be used correctly, you will discover that the angels and all their friends, those who have died and all the fairy beings and everybody, that they're trying to get through to us at times like that with this immense joy and enthusiasm, which if we're really depressed and really anxious, we might well misinterpret that. We might feel like the angels and their friends don't get it. They're not even feeling what we're feeling. No, they're not. Not in that way. They're exultant that you could get down this far because what humanity has yet to do is to get down far enough. We're the species that's meant to land in the densest conditions that exist in the universe. We're meant to land in total density. We're meant to die to ourselves at the most extreme level, and in that death to find rebirth in the next breath. Now, I'm going to claim that most of you listening to me on this call have experienced this very miracle, this very magic, time after time in your life. This is how you do it. In other words, I'm not so much prescribing this as describing this. I'm giving words to something that's already happening. It's just that in 2023, we're going to develop the art, the ultimate art of how to do this thing right, how to really, really get down. Now, I've had many, many down experiences in my life. I sort of act like that's not true because I have this Sag moon quality of always accentuating the bounce of things, the flow, the movement, the joy, all of it. Yes, but it's deceptive. It's very deceptive. What I have learned when I was in the pits, in the doldrums, what have I myself gone through because I'm still making all this sound. So pardon me, there's people that just came in to the living room of the house that I'm in, and they don't know I'm sitting in the bathroom doing this, so there's a little bit of noise outside. And hopefully, mostly you're picking up what's coming through my mic. Okay. Now, I've had many, many down experiences in my life. I sort of act like that's not true because I have this sad moon quality of always accentuating the bounce of things, the flow, the movement, the joy, all of it. Yes, but it's deceptive. It's very deceptive. What have I learned when I was in the pits and the doldrums? What have I myself gone through because I'm still making all this sound a little bit like it's happening outside of me and I'm just sort of fine in here? I love to do that, to make it sound like that. Well, here we go. When I was most down, which is many, many different times, not once, when I was much younger, I did a terrible job of responding to that first. I had no sense whatsoever of what to do. That was my initial response. I came from a family. I would love to meet you, and I'm doing a Facebook Live right now. So hang on, can you just give me 10 minutes? Because I'm live on Facebook, and then I'll be so happy to meet you and play. Okay, give me just a couple minutes. Okay. Hey, you guys, I'm back. This is what happens when you're staying in somebody else's house during a snowstorm. You get to meet the housemates who don't know you're doing a live in their bathroom, and hopefully they don't have to pee. All right, so back to where we were. So here we go. When I was most down, which is many, many different times, not once, when I was much younger, I did a terrible job of responding to that first. I had no sense whatsoever of what to do. That was my initial response. I came from a family where suffering was never dealt with. I never knew people who knew how to suffer. It wasn't even anything in my world whatsoever. It was missing in action completely. And when I was a teenager, like so many teenagers, I felt terrible about myself and about life for quite a while. I didn't know what to do with it. All I could do was go down with it and just feel bad, and that was it. So I did that for a while. How did I ever stop doing that? I don't know. But one of the things that happened to me was that I came to realize that some part of me was getting a whole lot out of these experiences that I was putting myself through. This was my first inkling that maybe things were not so straightforward as I thought they were. I was thinking psychologically at that point in my life. I was obsessed with psychology. So I thought that things were pretty literal and pretty direct and cause and effect and all the rest. Okay, so what I found, this is how it started, was that I was doing this to myself, which was a big revelation. Because when you're in the worldly state, you always think that everybody else is doing everything to you. I found that I was doing this to myself and that I was getting a lot out of it and that it was actually keeping me going. And it took me a while to really get that one because it didn't make any logical sense to me. And one of the most difficult things about being an adolescent is you have this tremendous draw to be rational about everything. I certainly did. So I couldn't believe that. I couldn't catch that. I couldn't imagine that. But it kept being true. It kept being truer and truer and truer and truer until it finally dawned on me, and it dawned on me in a series of experiences that were very overwhelming, that only when I suffered did I feel real. Only when I would feel my heart breaking and my whole body aching and the whole world caving in on me did everything and anything feel authentic. That the rest of the time I felt like a fraud. And so I so much didn't want to feel like a fraud that I actually felt magnetized to this deeper state that I was going through. And I began to lean into it. And that's when I discovered that I had a rare skill, which I at that point knew nothing about, where I got it from because I was not oriented toward things like past lives whatsoever. But I discovered I had a rare talent for actually taking things up the way they came through. Like if something came through to me directly in an energetic way, I would take it up exactly that way and stay with it, and I wouldn't go outside of it for anything. Once I knew that, I had hope for the first time, because I realized that no matter what happened, and it kept getting worse, of course, I could find myself in it. I would always find myself in it. So, my wild paradoxical discovery was that I could only find myself if I lost myself. And I refused to lose myself. If I refused to lose myself, I would stay at a very arid, flat surface level. And that was when I had to get beyond. And so basically, I became infinitely more concerned with the secret suffering of the soul. And since that is really the half of my true concern in life, the other half being the secret joy of the soul, that's when my life really began. That's when everything started to happen. And and I'm just going to pause here for a moment. I've been telling this story, in Elias's words that he's speaking, and I know this to be true from my personal experience. And any of you that know me personally, and what I've been through in this last year, I very much had this experience. And it's still a little too fresh in me to be able to talk about it here in this way. I know that time will come, and I do know what that is, to find myself at the crossroads of where it looks like there is no hope. There's no hope. Like, how is everything going to possibly ever be okay again? How am I ever going to be okay again? Am I even going to live through this experience? And what I always do find on the other side of those things, of those experiences and those times, because I'm very much a phoenix and I burn into ash and then I rise again. And I've done that a few times in my life, is that every time that happens and every time I rise, I couldn't even imagine the life that's awaiting for me, because it's absolutely beyond my comprehension, the tremendous grace and beauty that comes on the other side of those experiences. So I just want to give you all some encouragement and some hope, because I know we've all been going through those in our own way in 2022. And what he's saying is, hey, get ready, because we haven't gone all the way down to the bottom. And 2023 is going to take us to the bottom. And I just want to offer you all encouragement that this is not meaningless suffering, but there is something on the other side if we're willing to go all the way down to the bottom so we can get back up. I used to teach a personal growth course, and we talk about depression and about it being deep rest, and we would use this analogy of a roller coaster. If you're on a roller coaster, in order for the roller coaster to get back up, it's got to go down to the bottom, and it can't stop. Like, it has to let itself go down with all of that momentum so it can fall all the way through, so that then it can rise and come back up again. That's the problem, is when we put on the brakes, that's what creates the problem. The problem isn't that we're going to the bottom. The problem is that we put on the brakes on the way down to the bottom, so we don't get all the way through to the bottom, and then we can't get back up. Kind of like Pandora's box. With Pandora's box in the mythology, the problem wasn't that they opened Pandora's box. The problem was that they tried to close Pandora's box. So I'm here to encourage you and to remind you that when your Pandora's box opens, when those things come that are like no way, no fucking way, I'm not going here, I don't want to do this, I can't do this, I don't even know if there's anything on the other side of this, that's exactly the moment when if you can just sink down into your deep inner core and find your connection with your true being, with yourself, with your soul in the deepest way possible, and with spirit or God or the Almighty Supreme or Great Spirit or whatever consciousness you imagine consciousness to be, the place that you come from, and the place that you go to. If you can just, in those moments, just tap into that and allow yourself to go all the way down to the bottom, you will come to the other side and you will fly. As one of my mentors said to me when I was in all this, she said, dear one, just talk to that part of you that always wants to be serving, always wants to be giving, always wants to be moving forward, because that's how you're made. And you just talk to that part of yourself and say, it's okay. You just rest now. You just let yourself go down in here now, because we are going to fly like you can't even imagine on the other side. And I'm finding that to be so true. I am having a personal, very real experience of that. So that's my encouragement. Okay, so back to Ellias. We all know how horrible it is to suffer. Why would anyone want to suffer? The answer is it's much, much more life-giving to suffer and die than to flee from it. And so I just want to be clear. Elias here is not advocating that we choose suffering over joy. He's saying that when we're already suffering, the antidote to the suffering is actually to go into it instead of flee from it. He's not saying invite more suffering. He's saying when it's already here, don't avoid it. Let yourself go in there. Okay, and so back to Elias. My discovery endlessly is in the Saturn and Pisces vein that everything runs counter to the way the mind thinks. Everything runs counter to the way that the ego works. Everything runs counter to what we tell ourselves commonsensically all the time. And the way it actually is when we get to lose ourselves completely, that's when we have a chance. All of us, everybody on this call, everybody listening to this live, everyone on this whole planet, if you hadn't gotten through the 2020 so far, none of this would be happening. None of the good things that you're now starting to reap would be happening. And it's been the most magical, marvelous, incredible time because it's been bloody awful. And the world has just about ended and nothing's going the way it should. And that's why we have a chance now. Just before all this happened, things were really, really bleak. I mean, really bleak, because we were on a flat level where nothing could ever resolve itself or go anywhere really. So we need the roughage of the deep ocean. We need the incredible exposure, the raw, primal exposure to everything that could kill us, but could also bring us back around. And I hope you feel, as I feel, in this moment, a great relief. I feel a relief to say these things which I never say, because I, in my ego self, think that I'm mostly someone who has a great time in life. Ah, that's a really good one. And I think that I'm really good at making everything wonderful and amazing. Well, I am, but on a very superficial level. And on a deep level, my gift is to suffer and die, but not to stop there. Never to stop there. To suffer and die redemptively. To really get into it and really get through it. Do you feel in your depth soul that you can take the journey even deeper and further than you have so far? Do you feel in your soul, in your depth soul, that you can take the journey even deeper and further than you have so far? Can you even pledge yourself during 2023 that if it turns out that the collective energy needs to dive to the very bottom, that you can, instead of resenting it and complaining about it and judging it and condemning it, that you could actually say yes to it, that you could actually dig into it with a passion? Could you do that? Is it possible that that's what's called for? Not that this has to happen forever. This is not a formula for forever. This is when you've gotten down this far, you've got to go one leap further to go issue. We simply haven't hit pay dirt yet. We haven't quite grabbed the anguish of it. We haven't quite grasped it. We've still been fleeing from it. We've still been saying back to normal, back to normal, back to normal, back to normal. So that's the completion of the transcript from Ellias Lonsdale for the 6th holy night of Saturn going retrograde at 8 degrees Pisces on June 17th. So keep that in mind as we get to the end of spring, of what is actually really going on. If you can just remember, okay, this is what's going on. I'm going to the depth. I'm going to the depth. I want to hit pay dirt. Then that can bring us through in an entirely different way. And I wish you all a lovely rest of your evening, day, night, morning, whatever, whenever you're listening to this. And I'll be back tomorrow night on the last night of 2022. with the 7th holy night looking at Venus going retrograde in Leo. So take very good care of yourselves, be gentle with yourselves, and also be as determined as you can possibly be in your surrender and your letting go. And I send you lots of love and wish you a wonderful, blessed